Not much of a public speaker, so I'm probably going to read a few notes, so forgive me. All right, let's dive in. I'm Chris. Had a bit of an intro. Thanks, Will. Really appreciate it. I remember when the web was hand-coded. Yeah, I'm that old. I turned 50 last year, and you know what? I still love programming, I still love the web, and I still love WordPress. Started my professional journey when I was about 13. My dad actually got me certified in DBase 4 and made me build a CRM for his company. Did a few other things along the way, but things really got serious when I made it to Westpac. And I was working at Westpac as a stockbroker, and I suggested that they could automate their systems, and so they put me on a project, and next thing I knew I was redundant, but I started a career in business analysis. It was the best thing I ever did. I learnt so much during my time at Westpac, specifically around projects, systems architecture and business strategy. As a job, it did pay the bills. In fact, it paid them really well. But you know what? I wasn't happy. Didn't like it. So I started freelancing. It was a hobby. Hand-coded a lot of websites. They were basic, but at the time, the web was basic. And in 2007, I left the bank and I started my own business called Chatterton, my first agency. WordPress was about 3 years old at the time, and did some estimates recently. That's about 1 million WordPress websites back in those days, compared to today when we reckon there's about 500 million WordPress websites. It was exciting. Most techies knew the databases were the next big thing, but nobody was doing it. Systems like Drupal, Joomla, MediaWiki, WordPress, they were all just emerging. They were new, but they were transforming us from hand coding into content management systems. But it was still early days and there was no clear winner. We had to learn them all. I can see a few people in the room that are old as me, and they're all nodding going, yeah, I remember these days. But they all had different strengths and they all taught us something different about the web. But one was more intuitive than all the others. It was easier to use, it was more practical. Of course it was WordPress. So we all adopted that and we started putting our time into WordPress. Chatterton became a full service shop, content code, marketing, print, design, hosting, you name it, we did it. I was a sole trader, so everybody in the company did exactly what I asked, which was nice. But running a business was new and there was a lot of lessons to learn and it wasn't very easy. Somewhere in there I bought a skateboard shop, somewhere in there I sold a skateboard shop. I don't know what that was about, but anyway. Eventually I bought an agency called Brownbox. Stepping into ownership taught me a lot about blending technical excellence with business and how to make teams work. We grew to 12 and then I sold Brownbox to a company called Alphasys and I moved over to Alphasys. Alphasys is an amazing company. It works exclusively with for-purpose organisations, unifying their systems around WordPress, Salesforce and other best practice tools. We put a lot of work into understanding what sustainable systems actually are. Because we work with for-purpose, we believe it's important for them to do that. Today I lead their capability group where we focus on building WordPress, Salesforce, and it's exactly what we're going to talk about today is how do we build sustainable systems. So let's jump in. Today's talk is called Make the Move from Sites That Work to Systems That Last, how you can build sustainable systems. But what the talk's really about is why so many WordPress sites go live, but they don't last. The moments that shaped how I build WordPress websites today, what I think a sustainable system looks like, and time pending, a little demo of what we're using. So, what makes a sustainable system? Well, in my opinion, it's 4 things. Number 1, its ability to respond to change. That is content change. When clients turn around and they've got new logos, new navigation, those kind of elements, how nimble can you be? Number 2, it's low or no technical debt. What's technical debt? Well, it's that extra work and risk that builds up inside your site over time. You know, when you take those shortcuts, when you use that plugin, when you just should have gone and done those couple of lines of code, or you build something custom when there's a ready-made solution out there, these are the things that make technical debt and slow you down over time. Number 3, content debt. This is where there's very little or no duplicate content, where the same piece of content is being used and reused and reused. And so it's important to make sure that you've got sites that do that. And its ability to evolve over time. Very similar to the others, but more about that continuous improvement side of things. You see, it's not sustainable if it doesn't keep pace with the world around us. And so for years I've always said that if you build an architectural site, it'll be the last WordPress site you build from scratch ever again. And that's what sustainable systems are, building them to last. So in preparation for today, I sat down and I thought about what are those 9 moments in my history that shaped me to who I am today and why I think about sustainable systems and reusable content. Moment number 1. It's my very first WordPress website. Went live, so proud. I hand-coded every template, wrote every query, polished every pixel. 1 week after launch, I get a phone call from the customer. Hey, can we put an image on the category page? All of a sudden in my head, I'm like, taxonomies don't do featured image. What am I going to do? And so I've got to dive back into code and I've got to do some things, and as all good developers do, I got the job done. But it started me thinking about taxonomies. And in particular, do we need them? What value do they add, and are they just technical debt? And so that stuck with me and started my journey on the ideas of relational content. A few years later, moment number 2, we're about 2011. Most websites are coded the same way, hand coding, media queries, putting it all together. Every project's a little bit brand new. But something interesting was happening in the world. In the broader industry, Twitter, the social media giant, had been struggling with its internal UI consistency. And they wanted to do something to make sure that they were better. So they started a hackathon. They called it Project Blueprint. It aimed to standardise their CSS across the way they build their app. Teams came together, built components. Ultimately, Twitter released it as open source under the name we now all know as Bootstrap. Bootstrap exploded overnight. It grew in popularity. Web developers around were quickly adopted it because of its simplicity. But its popularity created this herd mentality. People started getting Bootstrap because people were getting Bootstrap. It wasn't necessarily because it was good. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not bad. It's actually a really good system, and I've built many sites on Bootstrap. But it does come as a cost. It's heavy. It's got extra things in it that you don't need. Therefore, it's got technical debt. Interesting enough, on the other side of the world, a completely different group is coming up with the same problem and trying to work out a solution. A company called Zerb, client-focused agency, was sitting down and saying, hey, we need a more repeatable way to do client websites. And almost exactly at the same time, they released their system, Foundations. And Foundations was lightweight, modular, very flexible. We looked at both the frameworks, and of course we could see the contrast. As powerful as Bootstrap was, it was rigid. Foundations, on the other hand, was leaner, more module. And although it wasn't the popular choice, we chose Foundations. Now, in the last couple of years, Foundations has lost a little bit of love, but there's an opportunity for it to be reactivated. If you don't know Foundations, I strongly encourage you to go and explore Zerb's Foundation framework as an alternative to Bootstrap, lighter, more nimble, and more client agency focused than let's build an app. And so we move on to moment 3. We're now at around 2012. And we've adopted Zerb as our front-end framework, solving many of our issues around consistency. But we're starting to realise that solid frameworks alone aren't going to be enough. We need a strategy for keeping our custom CSS clean as well. You see, our projects are now getting bigger and more complex. And you know this point when you're in the agency where you've gone from those smaller projects to the medium and they're getting bigger. And so we started to research again, and we discovered 2 methodologies, BEM and SMAX. BEM, block element modifiers, SMAX, scalable and modular architectures for CSS. Similar systems that both said that they would solve the same problem. We explored BEM first. The concept was simple and powerful. Every CSS class had 3 parts, the block, the element, and the modifier. The theory was really appealing. It gave us predictability. When writing CSS, you could almost guess what the classes were going to be. But while structure had its advantages of predictability, it was clear that BEM came at a cost. You had to put classes on everything, which means you're building up this just-in-case technical debt. On the other side, SMAX, completely different philosophy. Rather than tightly enforcing those conventions of single elements, SMAX advocated for organising styles into broader, more functional categories: base, layout, module, state, and theme. What drew me to SMAX was the emphasis on simplicity and flexibility. Rather than making every element highly specific, SMAX encouraged us to keep the classes semantic, minimal, and only use specificity where absolutely necessary. I suppose the example I like to use is when you think about building a website back in the day, you might be asked to make a block blue. And so you put a class on it, blue. You go in, you write some CSS and you say background equals blue. Client calls and says, actually, can we make it red? I've now got to go back to the PHP and HTML, make it red. Then I've got to go back to the CSS and make it red. Why don't we do something a bit more abstract? And this is what SMAX teaches us, to do it a bit more abstract. Now, obviously, this was a long time ago and the world's evolved and you've probably been doing this organically since. But understanding the difference between BEM and SMAX is what real architectural mindset is all about. And so taking that time to go and research some of these methodologies and say what works best for you is a really important moment. All right, a few more years passed and we're now around 2015. And we start noticing patterns emerging in the way we're doing things. Whether it was hero sections, breadcrumbs, related content, other newsletters, all different things. Each site essentially followed those similar patterns over and over and over again. And so we start copying code from old projects to the new projects. We start building snippet libraries. Around the same time, I came across Brad Frost's concept called atomic design. Anyone familiar with atomic design? Yeah, a few people. You know where I'm coming from then. Atomic design was about breaking interfaces down into small things, reusable blocks, and then breaking those things down into even smaller things. Designing at that level, and then putting it all back together again to build those big things. You see, atomic design aligned architectural mindset, it offered that mental model for structuring our themes. Inspired by this idea, we started to build our own system, a modular system within WordPress, and the first concept we built was called sections. Each section was effectively a micro template, a self-contained reusable unit in its own logic, its own styles and its own scripts. You could plug it into anywhere and you could do whatever you needed to do with it. Of course, WordPress ended up releasing a very similar framework about a year later in WP version 4.7, so what we'd done, they did again with template parts. Of course, our simple approach in the time helped us to be cleaner and we were able to move on with it, but we soon realised that it was only helping our developers. It wasn't helping our content editors. And so that's when we said we had to evolve the concept again. We had to move it into the front-end experience and start building it. So we built a place called Panels. And Panels were these recipe-based systems. It was a bit clunky, but it was pretty good at the time. We had about 10 recipes and content editors can go in and do what they wanted and build these sections. In some ways, each recipe was similar to the concept of today's blocks or patterns, but of course, none of that existed in WordPress at the time. And then life gets exciting. Fast forward another 3 years, we're in 2018. And I'm getting goosebumps just remembering these moments. Remember back in moment one when I said I started to question taxonomies? Well, guess what? I found this amazing plugin. Hands up who said that before. I found this amazing plugin. We found this plugin called CPTonomies. Anybody heard of that one? Yeah, a few? Yeah. This was a bit of a rogue one. Not many people sort of saw it, but when they did, I think they loved it. This meant that you didn't need to use taxonomies anymore. This meant that you could build a post type, build a relationship between two things all in one step. All of a sudden we were stepping out of the taxonomy space. And you know what? We did. We stopped using taxonomies completely and we've never felt so free in our lives. So you want to classify a post? Build a new post type. Just build a relationship. Client calls and says, put that image on the categories page. I just have to add support to the post type. Good to go. And so we didn't stop there. CPTonomies gave us a huge leap forward, changed the way we worked about things, simplified our architectures, reduced our technical debt, and most importantly, allowed us to step away from taxonomies. But at that very moment, there was this other interesting thing going on. Gutenberg got released in the same year. And so we've got this brand new, biggest change that WordPress has ever seen coming out. We give it to our customers and none of them know how to use it. They're all scared of it. It makes no sense. And so here we are, a really interesting moment in our architectural journey. On one hand, we're pushing forward, embracing a completely new approach to content with CPTonomies. And on one hand, we're resisting the biggest thing WordPress has ever done in so many years. So we move on to number 6. Pivotal turning moment in our space. We'd built powerful increasing systems. It was modular. We'd improved speed, empowered editors. But we started to wonder about the hidden costs we're building. The more we built custom code, the more we wondered how complex it was getting. In 2021, I was volunteering with TEDx in Sydney, and I heard a talk on technical debt. Short-term choices, choosing long-term maintenance problems. It really stuck with me that our system might actually be becoming one of these problems. And so it talked me into it, and we made the decision, and we moved away from a lot of our custom code. We kept the good bits, but we migrated on to Genesis. And Genesis is a great framework. It's really flexible, and it gave us the ability to do what we were doing, but we're leaning on an industry platform. But over time, we suddenly realised that tying ourselves to a big system was a new problem, a problem we hadn't realised: dependency debt. They suddenly released a new version of it. There wasn't a clear upgrade path, and we were stuck in an old version. And so Moment 6 forced us to rethink how we build flexible, sustainable systems without accumulating technical debt or dependency debt. And it also gave us a chance to re-examine some of the things we were doing. Devastating moment, moment number 7. All of a sudden, we've embraced CPTonomies, but guess what? It starts getting security warnings. It starts becoming unmaintained. There's no roadmap, no support. All of a sudden there's no guarantees. But we've embraced this new world. So we made some decisions. We're already using ACF, so it's got post objects and relationship fields. We could use that. CPT UI was a great plugin that we could grab to go and build post types, and we sort of spliced it together and moved on. Eventually ACF rolled out post type support, so we're able to drop CPT UI, yay, lose a bit of technical debt, that was good. And we sort of really stuck with this idea of relational content. And so moment 8 is last year, and we aligned with WP Engine. Although I suppose in some ways I could say they aligned with us, because I don't know what happened. They managed to buy everything we were using. So Gutenberg got released, and part of the team that was contributing to that moved on to make a system called Block Labs. Block Labs got bought by Genesis and turned into Genesis Blocks. But of course Genesis is a StudioPress system, including the Genesis framework, and it got bought by WP Engine 2018. Then Flywheel got bought in 2019, which of course has the local environments, and if you're not using local, go and look into it, get local. I remember the days we used to use XAMPP and it had to string everything together and make sense of it. Local makes life so much easier. Of course, we're using ACF. Most of us are these days. ACF gets bought by Delicious Brains. If you don't know Delicious Brains, look into that one as well. Some great CI/CD architectures in terms of push-pull code and content between environments. And then, of course, Delicious Brains gets bought by WP Engine as well. So either we were making really good decisions or they were, sort of snooping on what we're doing and stealing it. I don't know, something in there was going on. But look, yeah, definitely some true alignment there. And so realising number 9 is really where I get to the point where, it's 2025, we've been doing this for a long time. My journey's been the same as a lot of you in the room, but it's also been different in some places. And what I've really realised now is that it's the parts that make up the whole. And with that in mind, we now treat our cards, our rows, our wrappers, our queries, our merging, and our functions all as individual small products. And bringing them together is the collection of what we do. It allows clients to organise their content into experiences. And every part of it can be upgraded independently and moved forward. And so they're the 9 moments that have really shaped my approach to WordPress. Now I promised a demo and I'm going to jump in, I'm feeling brave, I'm going to do a real live demo, so something's going to go wrong. But a quick disclaimer, we're not suggesting our systems are the best systems. We're not suggesting they're silver bullets. We're not saying this is a magic recipe. We're just hoping that through the stories I've shared today and the demo I'm going to do, that you pick up something that helps you to shape your journey and move you a little bit closer to a sustainable system, a little bit closer to architectural mindset. All right, let's do it. I'm feeling brave. Okay. All right. Is that WordPress? Yeah, great. All right, I'm in WordPress. Demo number 1, let's have a look. So I'm going to use some of the words that I've just sort of spoken through, so hopefully it all sort of makes sense still. We're going to build a card. And so we've got our post type cards, 4 cards. And so here's my cards framework. It's just a post type framework. It's set up to the old text editor rather than using blocks because we're building a little micro template that we want to use and reuse. We built some wizards to make life easy. So I'm going to build a little card with like a picture on one side and title and things on the other side. So I'm going to use my little wizard. I'm going to say, yep, I want one row and I want 2 columns, and it gives me a little snippet that I should be able to steal here and go, ta-da, there we go. I've now got my basic grid. But of course, I want to make the whole card clickable, so I'm going to wrap it in an A. And if anybody notices an error, happy to take some debugging as we go. I want to change what's in the first cell to be the background image, and so I'm going to put the background image in there. You can see here we've got our own little merge notation that we've developed, sort of a bit of a throwback to Liquid from Shopify and the way they do things, but also something that developers can walk straight into. You can see it says post and it says, so this one says image and featured image, but we can use other elements as well. In here, instead of putting cell in here, let's put in this one 2 rows and 1 column. And so I'll grab that and I'll drop that straight in. In the first cell, why don't we put that post title when we call this? So we'll put in here post title. Again, there's that little notation that says, yep, we're going to grab the post title. and under that we'll put post date. Awesome. I call this demo, and effectively I build a little micro template of a single card, an atomic component that can then call onto the site and use. And so fingers crossed if everything went well, that gives me my little micro template. So let's use it. We'll go to pages, we'll add a new page. Oh, internet's down? No, it's all good. Our pages, our posts. And in here I'm going to call one of our query blocks. And so our query blocks have been through some great names. You know, it was super block at one point, but we're alphasys, so eventually we called it alpha block. So here's our alpha block. It does most of our query framework for us. If you're a developer, which you should all be, most of those things up there probably feel like code you've written. So number of posts I want, what's the post type, any filters I want to apply, how many do I want per row, what template am I using, all these sort of pieces are probably really familiar for coders, but this is putting in the hand of content. And so I'm going to go and call my posts. Don't need any filters, I'll leave it at 3 per row. We'll use our little card we've used. I'll change the date, we'll make it descending, and all of a sudden, yes, it worked. I got a card, I got a row. Client calls, and client says, yep, that's great, but you know, I think we should put like a read more on it or something. All right, let me go and play with my card. Now we built a little, we call him menu bot. He sits in the corner over there, and I can engage with him very quickly. And so he just gives me a quick rundown of everything that's going on inside the WordPress admin menu. So as I start to type, he gives me a shortened list of everything that's going on in there. So I can use him to get places fast inside the site. So I'm going to head back to our cards. I'm going to go all cards, and I'm going to open a new tab. There's all our cards, there's our demo. All right. Well, this is our second row, so let's reuse that and make it a third row. Instead of post title, I want to say read more. And I want to add an extra class in here from our Smacks framework, button, update. All right, did it work? Hey, we've got a read more button now. Obviously, we can do a little bit more styling and those sort of pieces, but this gives us a really quick way. Client says, I love it, but what about that other card we've been using? Oh, yeah, great, let's swap out. We'll just use that other card because that other card's much prettier. Yep, yay! And all of a sudden, we've got another card. So demo number 1, sitting there and saying, yep, let's build some micro templates and cards. Let's use an alpha block. Let's query it. Let's get those things moving. All right, demo number 2. Ooh, this one gets a bit more interesting. All right. I'll publish that one. Okay, great. Let's go in and we'll have a look at one of our posts. All right, here's my post. Come and see me at WordPress. All right, so let's say I wanted to put on this bit of an attribution to the author. I wanted to suddenly show, you know, oh, can we just add on there, you know, maybe their face and their name and tell a bit of a story who they are? Sure, we can do that. All right, let's go back and let's go to ACF first because we love ACF. We're going to need to build our taxonomy. So we jump into post types. We're going to say add new. The taxonomy we're going to build is for people. People. Going to make some things look pretty. Always need to be pretty. Give it a nice little icon. Great. Hit save. And what we should have now is people post type. Okay. Field groups, we need to connect it to the others. So we're going to add a field group. Just for simplicity, I'm going to call it people. We're going to use post object as our relation. Field's going to be called people. Field name's people as well. Just want the ID. That's fine. I'm going to connect it to our posts because they're the ones we want to add the relationship to. I'm going to put it in the sidebar. Don't like things elsewhere in the site. And if I hit save, we should now have on our posts. Here's our post. We'll hit refresh. Hey, we've now got a space called people. Excellent. So with a space called people, we're going to need people. I may already have one in here. There we do. Chris. There I am, Chris. So I've got my people. So I can come back to my post and I can say, yep, all right, let's connect this to Chris. Oh. Ooh, I skipped a step. Did anybody spot it? I didn't tell this to filter by people. Hopefully that's the only trip. All right, let's try again. All right, select, yay, people. All right, so now this post is connected to Chris. And so all I've got to do is bring it together. Let's go and add in our next block. So our next block is a merge block. And our merge block is going to come in here and say, all right, I want to add something to merge. So I'm going to write up here people. For me, I like to just wrap it in something so I know it's something I'm replacing on the page. But this is a full block editor up here, so we can add any blocks that exist. We can do anything and we can merge from it, so it acts as any sort of wrapper experience. Once I've got this here, this is what I'm trying to find. I'm trying to find it, word people. I want to take from this piece of meta here, great. And I want to show it with one of our cards. And hey! It's gone and looked up the other post, it's brought it back, it's put it together, it's used the card. And because we're in a card framework, we can go and change that card whenever we want to. And so there's demo number 2. Demo number 3, love a good subscription. Got to put your subscribe on the bottom of every page. How are we going to do it? WordPress lets us write our content. We copy that out. Once we've got that, we can go and create in our system a row. And so we're going to add ourselves a subscribe row. Subscribe. Doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem right either. There we go, that's close enough. And we're going to add it in. Great, we've got our subscribe row. Let's publish that. There's a couple of ways we can use this row on the page we're on. So let's head back to our posts. Delete this guy because we don't need him anymore. And so instead what we can do is we can call our row directly. Reusable row. Going to use our latest one, which is actually an ACF reusable row. And I'm going to call my subscribe. And if I preview this guy, oh, did I not pick it? No, I didn't pick it. Subscribe, great. And hey, we've got it on the row. But what if we want it on every page? We want it on every page, great. We're going to come back and we're going to play with an idea called wrappers. So now we're able to come in and we're able to now go in and say on all our posts, let's edit our wrappers. We've got our hooks set up, before the header, after the header, before content, after the content, before blah, 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 blah. Let's put this after the content. I've already got one there, other insights. Let's add a new one. We're going to choose subscribe. Actually, I want it to sit above. And hit update. Now if I go to any one of our posts on the site, I've probably got too many because this one's got them all going on. I should have at the bottom here our subscribe row, so that's the local one. That's the one that's in the wrapper. And if I go to any one of these pages, they should now all have the same experience at the bottom of the page. And that's my last demo. Thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure talking today. Anybody got any questions?
So with the cards, you've got your... Are they stored in the database?
Yes. Nah, they're all stored in the database. Yeah, thanks WP Engine. So obviously your systems are all backed up on a regular basis. You've got revisions available inside your website for all your post content, so you've got that version as well. Delicious Brains pushing and pulling between environments, so you've got the same version being pulled down. So we push code up and we pull database down, and so that way our environments have enough backup capability to be able to support it. Nah. So we've lifted up a lot of those controls in. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody in the organisation's got them. We also use members as a capability to build role-based progression, so people can have all these different capabilities. So you find capable individuals. So this is where my clients have got devs, but we don't want to give them access to the Git and do all that. So how do we give them a level of access to be able to do things? Well, they live at this level, and we make sure we've got strong backup and retention sort of strategies. Great question. Like I said, it's not a silver bullet, doesn't solve every problem, isn't for everybody. It was more about giving you guys some ideas to be thinking differently about ways to go. Any other questions? No, it's all handwritten. Yeah. So look, it's been a long journey. I've worked with many great people. In fact, Mark Parnell at the front here actually coded probably the first half of that. Back in the day, we used to work closely together. He's Did say his name up there, but we parted ways about 7 years ago. But no, it's all hand-coded. No. It's about weighing it up. You know, sometimes it really makes sense to learn existing things. Sometimes it makes sense to do it your own. And I suppose it's a real challenge for me personally. Although I think like an architect, I am a developer at heart. When I've got nothing to do on the weekend, I'll sit down and I'll code. And so, you know, it's hard for me to say, am I doing the right thing? And I have to keep myself in check. Am I building technical debt by hand coding, or am I building something that's more sustainable? And because I do code with that mentality, I quite often don't do it myself. I quite often use other systems and platforms. But making sense of the choice is what's important.
So,
Not very well. So the really, really old ones, yeah, probably not very well at all. But more recently, this is where the sort of atomic design thinking comes into a bit more, where we're now treating functions as products. So we're in a position where everyone's running a sort of a unification kind of thing, that we can add and remove functions and upgrade single functions whenever we need to. And we build those with all endpoints in mind to each other, so they're all cooperating at different levels and backwards compatible. And so depending on the need, we're able to roll out a new card, a new function, a new block, or the new version of that functional block, and have it live within the ecosystem. So that's probably only been about the last maybe 2 years or so. We've really had that sort of, how do we sustain that? And that's probably been a really big piece for us to try and crack, because other times it's been, reinvest to the next, reinvest to the next. A bit like upgrading Drupal. No, it's still, they're still on their own forked version of the collection. And so that way they're maintaining theirs and they're making choices. So they're only taking on the just-in-time pieces. They're not moving into, we've got it all just in case. And so when they say, I need one of these, we're able to go back out to the world and say, have we got one? If we do, yep, great, and pass it on. If we don't, and it's a good idea, well then we'll help them to make that so the rest of our community can now take advantage of it. And so getting them all to work together is sort of part of it, even though none of them know each other. Up the back. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Look, we use members from the MemberPress framework. It's a small capability that allows you to build your own sort of custom roles and permissions, but there's a magic flick in there that you can switch and it says, these aren't one or the other, you can have multiple. And so now we can build permission sets, and this is actually a piece of architecture we solved from the Salesforce ecosystem. Building those small permission sets, who can access cards, who can access this, who can access that, and one by one you can say, oh, you're qualified now, I'll give you access to that. And so we work on that least privilege access. Only people that need it get access to the bits they want. Everybody else has to back off. And yeah, like the earlier questions, there's a bit of risk there that they could trip over themselves and cause a problem, but there's a level of backup that usually is sufficient to be able to recover if they do.